Bryan Johnson has all the labs, a team full of doctors, a full data dashboard, and a room full of longevity machines. But there are still 3 simple rules he can't ignore, and they're surprisingly low tech.
And that's good news for the rest of us, because most people aren't trying to live like Bryan Johnson. We're trying to wake up with more energy, stay strong after 40, and make better choices before age starts making choices for us.
So in this video, we are looking at 3 simple longevity rules that show up even inside the most extreme biohacking routine in the entire world, but we're bringing it back down to real life. So if Bryan Johnson has the labs, the doctors, the data, and all the money, but he still has to come back to the basics, what does that mean for the rest of us?
And more importantly, what are these basics that deserve our attention?
Quick clarification, this isn't a rip on Bryan Johnson video. Honestly, we think what he's doing is pretty fascinating. All the testing, the discipline that goes into it, the willingness to measure everything. We know how frustrating it is to track simple things. There's a lot to learn from that.
But there's also a trap. When people see something that extreme, they can start to believe longevity is only for people with unlimited money, private doctors, and a schedule built around optimization.
That's exactly why we want to slow this down a little bit. Because if you only look at the expensive part, you miss the useful part.
The useful part is that even with all the technology, the foundation is still built on habits regular people can understand and implement.
Let's be honest about one part of that statement. They're not always easy habits to build. Simple doesn't necessarily mean easy, but it does mean accessible.
And for the worldwide tribe, that matters, because the goal isn't to become someone else. The goal is to make small health investments today that help protect your energy, strength, and independence later.
So the question isn't, can we just copy Bryan Johnson? We realize that most of us can't, and most of us probably don't want to.
The better question is, what are the basics his protocol keeps proving right?
Before we get into the visible stuff, like the workouts, the meals, the routines, all the things that we like to post about, we need to start with the invisible part.
Because if your body never gets a chance to repair, everything else is harder, which is why rule number 1 is recovery.
I know, recovery doesn't sound very exciting. Doesn't sound like a billionaire biohacker rule. It sounds kind of like the thing everybody already knows, yet we know we always find a way to negotiate with that rule.
That's why it matters, because recovery is not just getting rest. It's the condition your body needs before it can actually adapt.
We know Bryan Johnson tracks recovery with more data than anybody in the entire history of the planet. But the tracker can only tell you what's happened in the past. It can't recover for you, even if you're a billionaire.
His body still needs what everybody needs: enough sleep, a consistent rhythm, a real wind down, and space between the stress of the day and the repair work of the night.
So this is where I get myself in trouble, right? I love the numbers. I love all the gadgets. I love trying to find the thing that actually moves the needle.
But sometimes the thing that moves the needle is not new, it's the basics.
Yeah, sometimes the honest answer is simply, I stayed up too late. I ate a big meal too late. I was on my phone too late. I treated my sleep like the leftover part of the day, and then acted surprised when my body didn't feel ready the next morning.
And that's the trap. We want better energy, better workouts, better food choices, better focus. but we keep stealing from the place those things come from.
You can build the best morning routine in the history of the world, but if your night routine is chaos, your body starts your day in debt.
And after 40, that debt gets more expensive.
Bad recovery doesn't stay in the bedroom. It follows you into the kitchen, it follows you into the gym, into your work, and into your mood. Then we try to fix the whole thing with a little extra dose of caffeine, some willpower, and the good Lord's Prayer.
Which works for a while until it doesn't.
So the first rule, even Bryan Johnson can't ignore, is simple. Protect your repair window. Because before you can optimize the machine has to recharge.
And for the worldwide tribe, this doesn't mean copying Bryan Johnson's entire sleep protocol. It means choosing one recovery rule your body can count on. Same bedtime most nights, some morning light.
No heavy meals right before bed, sticking to a real screen cutoff time.
Not all of them at once. Pick one, make it boring, make it repeatable, because recovery isn't doing nothing. Recovery is when your body is doing work you can't yet see.
Now that you know your body has had a chance to repair, the next question becomes, what kind of body are you giving to it to repair? This is where Rule 2 comes in. But before we address Rule 2, there's a bigger question. What happens when regular people try to take a piece of Bryan Johnson's blueprint and bring it to their real life?
Not copy it perfectly, just test what is useful.
Hold on to that, because that question is going to matter before we're done. But before we get to that experiment, we need to talk about the second rule even Bryan Johnson can't ignore. And this one's kind of personal for me.
Strength.
Yeah, and we're not talking about that gym bro strength. We're talking about the strength that you need in your 70s, 80s, and 90s to carry your groceries, get yourself up off the floor, walk up those stairs, lift your suitcase, open that jar, and not have your world slowly shrink because your body can't keep up.
That's the shift people need to understand. After 40, strength isn't just about appearance. It's about capacity. It's about keeping your life bigger.
And this is one of the things that I actually respect about Bryan Johnson's blueprint system. For all the biomarkers, supplements, and testing, movement is still baked into his protocol. It's not optional. His routine includes strength, cardio, mobility, and balance. All the boring physical work that keeps the body useful into your 80s and 90s.
Because the data can tell you how your body is doing, but your body still has to be able to do the things.
This is where I think a lot of us get tricked. We hear the term longevity, and we naturally think about blood work, supplements, sleep scores, glucose numbers, red light therapy, all this semi-futuristic stuff. But then real life asks a much simpler question.
Can you get up? Can you carry something? Can you move without fear? Can you keep doing the ordinary things that make you feel independent?
After my cancer treatment, this got very real for me. I remember standing in the kitchen with a jar in my hand, just trying to open it like I always had before, and nothing, couldn't get it to budge. Not because the jar was special, but because I was just weaker than what I thought.
And that kind of moment changes how you see strength. Because suddenly, strength isn't about looking good in a shirt. It's about ordinary life. It's about not needing help for something you used to do without thinking, like opening that jar. And that's why this matters for the worldwide tribe. Muscle is one of those things people don't always notice they're losing until life starts getting smaller.
That's the scary part. It usually doesn't happen all at once. It's not some dramatic movie scene. It's little things like you stop carrying those heavy bags, you avoid the stairs, you stop doing things because it feels a little bit harder than what it used to.
And every time your world gets a little smaller, your future self pays for it.
So the second rule, even Bryan Johnson and all of his fancy protocols can't ignore, is this: build strength now before you desperately need it.
And that doesn't mean you need a perfect gym routine. It means your body needs a reason to stay capable.
Push something, pull something, squat something, hinge, carry. Use those muscles with a purpose.
2 or 3 times a week is a great starting point for most people. Not perfect, consistent.
And if you're starting from zero, just start smaller. Start with carrying those groceries with intention. Start with making sure you actively take those stairs every time you're given an opportunity.
The goal is not to become Bryan Johnson. The goal is to build a body your future self can still trust.
Because when we talk about prolonging your prime, this is one of the clearest places to start. Strength is not just muscle. Strength is freedom into your later years.
And once we talk about recovery and strength, we have to talk about the thing feeding both of them. Because rule number 3 is where a lot of people try to get fancy, when the answer may be getting honest.
So rule number 3 is all about food. And yes, we do have a tendency to get a little fancy with food now and then, don't we? But this is where longevity can get just ridiculous fast, because food is emotional, food is cultural, food is convenient, food is family, food is stress. It's not just numbers on an app.
And yet when you look at Bryan Johnson's blueprint world, food is one of the most controlled parts of the whole thing. The meals are measured, the ingredients are planned, the timing matters, the macros matter. But the lesson for regular people isn't eat exactly like Bryan Johnson. The lesson is that food isn't random. What you eat is information your body has to respond to every single day.
So the problem is, this is where people either go too extreme or too casual. One side says, I need the perfect diet. And the other side is like, I'll just figure it out later.
And both can become a trap, because perfect is exhausting, but careless is expensive. And most people don't need a perfect meal plan. They need better defaults.
That's a big distinction, because I can get lost in this. I can just look at the protocol like blueprint and start thinking, okay, I need to do the exact meal, the exact same amount of grams, exact timing, and the exact supplement stack.
And for most people, that's where the whole thing breaks down. It becomes too much before it ever becomes useful. So instead of making one better choice, we start negotiating with the plan we were never going to follow anyway. And then food becomes another place where people feel like they failed.
Which is backwards, because food should not be a daily courtroom where you put yourself on trial. I know I do that to myself all the time. Food should be a daily opportunity to give your body what it needs more often than not.
And that's the bridge between Bryan Johnson's extreme version and real life. He controls food because he believes it matters. We don't have to copy the control to learn from the principles.
So the third rule, even Bryan Johnson can't ignore, is this: eat like your future body is listening.
And for the worldwide tribe, that starts with simple questions. Did the meal give me protein? Did it give me fiber? Did it give me plants? Did it help my energy, or did it make the rest of my day harder? Not perfect, just honest.
Build more meals around protein, plants, and real food. Reduce the ultra-processed stuff wherever you can. Drink tons of water. Pay attention to how food makes you feel 2 hours later, not just while you're eating it. That's where the truth shows up. Not just in that first bite, in the afternoon crash, in the sleep that night, and in the workouts tomorrow.
Food isn't punishment. It's one of the most repeated health investments you make. And repeated is the key word. One perfect meal doesn't change your future, but your default meals might.
So now we have all three rules. We have recovery, we have strength, and we have the fuel that we put in our body. Three simple rules that sound almost too simple until you realize that one of the most extreme longevity protocols in the world still is built around those three simple principles.
So when we look at Bryan Johnson, it's easy to get distracted by the expensive stuff.
The labs, the supplements, the routines, the data dashboard, the doctors, the full-time commitment and whatnot.
And look, some of that's fascinating. We're not pretending it isn't.
No.
There is real value in testing, measuring, and asking better questions about aging.
But the biggest lesson may not be the most complicated one, because after all the money and all the tracking and organization, the foundation still comes back to the three basics: recovery, strength, and food.
Not because those things are trendy, but because those things are unavoidable. Your body still has to recover. Your muscles still need a reason to stay useful. And your food still sends a signal every single day. That's why the basics win. Not because they're flashy, but because they're the things your future self needs to thrive in your 70s, 80s, and 90s.
That future version of you isn't built by expensive biohacks first. It's built by the simple things you repeat when nobody's watching.
So pick one: recovery, strength, or food. Don't try to fix your whole life by Monday. Just choose one rule your future self can count on.
Remember, the goal here is not to become Bryan Johnson.
The goal is to prolong your prime in a way you can actually live and sustain.
Look, we get it. When most people look at Bryan Johnson, it's really easy to think longevity lives way out there somewhere, in a lab, in a dashboard, in a protocol, or in a life that most of us are never going to live.
But your future body is being shaped much closer to home. It's being shaped on the random Tuesday night when you decide whether to go to bed or keep scrolling. It's being shaped when you choose to lift something heavy instead of slowly letting your world get smaller. It's being shaped when you build a meal your body can actually use instead of grabbing whatever is easiest because the day got away from you.
None of those choices look impressive in the moment. Nobody stands up and claps when you go to bed on time on a random Tuesday night. Nobody's making a documentary about you because you did a few squats in your garage, and nobody sees the quiet little decisions you make that could have gone the other way.
But your future self will feel it, because the future version of you isn't built by expensive biohacks first. It's built by the simple things you repeat when nobody is watching.
And that's why the basics win. Not because they're flashy, but because they compound.
So pick one rule your future self can count on, then repeat it long enough for it to become part of who you are.
Earlier, we asked what would happen if regular people tried to take pieces of Bryan Johnson's blueprint and bring them into real life.
Not copy it perfectly, not turn our lives into a full-time science project. Just test what might actually be useful.
Well, guess what? We've actually started that experiment.
We've been looking at Blueprint from the inside out, the labs, the habits, the cost, the parts that make sense, not the parts that may not fit real life.
So this video showed you that the basics still win, but the next question becomes, what happens when we actually start testing out Blueprint for ourselves?
Watch this video next, because that's where we stop talking about the idea
and start finding out what it really takes.